Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Tara Reid came out to say the man they tried to label the messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer, and knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers, and knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character, that his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations. Until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of three-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reid gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises.
You know, sir, I like you much better with my glasses off.
I guess I was born with the curse of foresight, 'cause I knew Joe was only gonna represent the war side. And that said, I just came to fight. You could keep the or flight. Save the surprise and the gasp when the shadow of the fascists have cast is on your doorstep in the glow of your porch light. Save the surprise when the grid goes down and we go underground to lick wounds in the gloom of a torchlight. While up in the sky, a blimp glides by with a sign like New Year's 2022. Brought to you jointly by Pfizer and Coors Light. While the centrists observe from a comfortable courtside, right in the thick of the action behind a partition. We're in a morbid position, a plague of evictions, born a comorbid condition of the cancer of wealth. I fantasize that I cancel myself, hands on your head, throw your best laid plans in the well. There are no more answers, questions go back on the shelf. All Joe's donors, a quick show of hands. How many of you sub to the Lockheed Martin OnlyFans? How many are loyalist patrons for the Raytheon Patreon? Occupy Iraq and send $1 million off into the great beyond. Cool yourself with the safety on. True to yourself in as much as you dutifully spew out a mucus of QAnon. You can't convince me the Capitol wasn't surrendered with every intention of digging us deeper down into the treacherous webbing of censorship, ebbing your speech and dissension, so you can't hold Biden accountable. Not in his mentions and not in the streets. No to the end that Joe will defend the elite. Joe won't embarrass McConnell, but Joe's not embarrassed if all of your children are hungry and weak. Too hungry to speak. Too hungry to stand, they just lie at his feet. Joe is fresh out of empathy, fresh out of policy, but he'd love to know, what was your favorite ice cream flavor to eat? Back when you used to eat. I guess the road isn't rocky for people who thought we were free. They'll believe what they read, and Joe's here to lull them to sleep. Counting us down by the dozens, the culling of gullible sheep, led to the slaughter by media tyrants and government thieves. These are the leeches that stubbornly suck where there's nothing to bleed. These are the tumors that force us to crawl on our knees. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08.
One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. One was foreclosed in 08. One was condemned in 16. This is the home of the brave. This is the land of the free. March of Dimes. Family fun run cancer bonanza. Front page of Apartheid Times. All of the charm of a car bomb. Arms wide open, taking no targets alive. Dark was the night, save for a red glow painting the sky in a sickening light. Like a scene out of hell or a day in an utterly alien life. When the fire runs wild. These are the years where the wild is more your daily drive. To wrestle the truth of extinction from out of the jaws of your pride. So open them wide, now is the time, there's nothing to fight. Blasted or sworn to defy, the end is the same and we're inches away from the line. So abandon your ego to die, the bed that we made is where we go to die. But never was passing in one's own sleep such a hideous sight. Such a storm of convulsion and bile expulsion from out of our mouths and our eyes. But these are the rights they implore us to exercise, with our signature forged and our hands all tied. And with eye contact and a senator's smile, they thank you for saving democracy right as they tighten the binds. Right when they're joining your chain to your neighbors, leading you out in a line. Call it the March of Dimes. One more charity parody. Hold back grants while we dance for the president's salary. Funding the bunkers where all of the wealthy will cower to witness our steepest decline. To err is a trait so inherently human. And to hoard enough wealth that you peacefully sleep when those humans are burning alive is truly divine. If divinity really means withered and fully decaying inside, you could live with yourself till you run out of wine and ring for a drone off a prime, skim a little off at the top of the March of Dimes. Sign of our system of capital, head to the sky with a hideous cry that mimics the suffering families out on the street that have built a career out of passing by, who were part of the great design. Part of a citizen base with its fate resigned. Part of a two-party system where both of the goals align. And the end result is more housing crisis than the plot device of 2009. Capitalism demanded a sacrifice. So I walk to the square, hand them my son, and they hand me the dice. I roll for his life. To an equal extent, you could say I was rolling for mine. I'd called any favor, I paid any bribe. But it's all up to me for the roll, so I close my eyes. And the sound of the crowd is the same for a 1 or a 5. Two equal outcomes playing as though they're on opposite sides. And I know in my heart that on 4 out of 6 he'll be fine. But I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight. I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight. I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight. Nah, I can't seem to roll them, I can't let them go, I'm just holding them tight. I'm just holding them tight. My lips, brand new taxes starving all the billionaires and neutering their Visa Maxes. Topple Congress off their axis, mobilize the homeless, give them axes, call it praxis. Chop a couple limbs off the legislative branches. We'll show you the difference between air as a human right and guaranteed oxygen access. Octogenarians who barely know what day it is are culling countless citizens while sitting on a dais made of ignorance that was built on the graves of the slaves made to labor for its self-declared significance. And all to build a Congress full of millionaires who make their fortunes insider trading while they shit on all the indigent. So I got a bone to pick with our leaders, and I'll start with the ligaments. Pick right through the muscle, dig the marrow out, and serve it to the unhoused millions living in their minivans or watching their belongings get evicted from their tenement. I have a dream where we breach the walls of Congress and just let them in. And what happens next will survive in only text, cause there won't be any evidence. There will only be that heavy kind of feeling that pervades a space where there has been a reckoning and you can feel its remnants. Let any man who enters seeking power know that those who came before him suffocated on their eminence. That there once was a seal on the wall, but we quartered it and scattered all the pieces that it might prevent its semblance. And so we end the great experiment.
Welcome back, everyone. And here we are in Politics of Survival. And I have a wonderful guest that I've been talking to for some time, and I'm so excited to have her on my show. She is an author. She also worked a lot on the Hill. She also worked for a certain famous former New York governor. And I'd like to introduce to you Karen Hinton. Hi, Karen.
Hi, glad to be on your show.
Oh, it's so nice to see you. I'm glad to talk with you. And I wanted to start out because I know, some folks might not know exactly who you are, but if you could tell us a little bit about your book and just kind of what, came to bring you into the light of the public, so to speak.
Well, the name of my book is Penis Politics, a memoir of women, men, and power. And that is what the book is about the power dynamic between the two sexes. And it's not about all men. It's about some men who need, for whatever reason, to use power, control, and authority over the women and the girls in their lives. And what I wanted to do with the book was tell stories about myself, but also about other women and young girls who I knew from the time I was 16 to 61. I'm 63 now, but I finished my book 2 years ago. So, yeah. And I try to build a journey from the time I'm in high school until I have a very bad accident. And I have to struggle with starting over in so many ways because of the accident. And it really was, writing the book was really like a recovery for me. And one thing led to another. And pretty soon I go, hey, this might be something that I could publish and I could talk about. And so I ended up writing stories about women and young girls who've gone through that sort of spectrum of everything from sexual harassment, flirting, sexual misconduct, all the way to rape and violence. And, I was hoping that then as a result of that, other women would tell their stories too in different ways, but maybe others will be public about it. And I think that's really important now.
Right. And most recently, you were part of a criminal investigation into Andrew Cuomo, your former boss from New York. And can you tell us a little bit about that and where that kind of fit into what you were talking about?
Yes. Andrew Cuomo, I worked for when he was housing secretary in Washington, D.C. back in the 90s during the first and second Bill Clinton terms. And I was his press secretary, and I got to know him very well, worked very hard for him. He did a lot of great things when I was working for him at HUD, but there were problems with his behavior then. And as time passed, I don't know what brought him to a place where he ended up sexually harassing and being sexual misconduct in the workplace. And I mean, literally in his office, in the executive chamber, when he's the New York governor, with young women, not women his age or women in their 40s or 50s, but young women. And I was shocked by that behavior. I knew that there were things about him that could be very frustrating and irritating. He was certainly a bully, and he could be extremely mean to employees and other people in his orbit. But I did not think that these women would come out and talk about him the way they did. And I had already finished my book when this happened. And, so when then the Attorney General of New York, Tish James, decided to look into it and investigate it, I think even Andrew Cuomo called on her to investigate it. And she did a really good job. And she talked to so many people, and she obtained evidence of all sorts, emails, text, confirmation of what the women were telling her, that when the report came out, it added up to what I saw as a violation of the sexual harassment laws that exist in New York. And so for me, I had to take a step back from writing my book for a few months just to bring his story into that context. Because there was an incident with me back in 2000, and I do write about that in the book and had already written it, but suddenly there were 11 other women telling similar stories. And, I had to take account of that. And I end up starting my book with a prologue about Charlotte Bennett, who was one of the 11 women. And when I heard her do an interview on CBS about the conversation and the dynamic that existed between the two of them, Andrew Cuomo in his office, and she's 25 years old. He knows she is a victim of sexual assault. And yet he puts her into this very tough, harmful, damaging situation that is unforgivable. And, after I saw that, I remember just crawling into a fetal position on my couch when I saw the interview, because I thought, oh my God, this is a nightmare for these women. And so, that's why the investigation by Tish James was so important, because the first thing she said was, I believe these women. And, we've gone through decades, you and I, we've gone through decades of no one believing women
Right.
And we've had it happen to ourselves, but we also have seen it happen to our friends and people, women we know. And in my case, a girlfriend back in high school, which we can talk about a little later. But, when she said, I believe these women, that was important. And I just really want attorney generals across the country to get very serious about their sexual harassment laws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I saw when Lindsay Boylan had been following me for a while on social media, and I had communicated with her privately before, and then she went public before she went public. And I was happy to see that she landed with an investigative reporter that, did her story justice and didn't have her torn apart, because I was frankly just torn to pieces. And, you were, I'm sure, a witness to that.
Yeah.
Now, you and I were in DC, although we didn't cross paths,
Right.
but we were in DC at about the same time. I was there in 92, 93. Well, I was there before and then after, but I mean, essentially working for Biden during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interesting because you mentioned that you were his press secretary. Do you remember Evelyn Lieberman, Joe Biden's press secretary, at all?
I do know her name, and I do remember her being around, but I don't think I never got to know her well.
Well, it was one of her staffers that told me at the time when I made my sexual harassment report. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys that worked for her said to me when he knew it had gotten around the office that I had filed the sexual harassment report, mm-hmm. He said, Tara, we will fucking destroy you. And I was in my 20s. That was really scary.
Sure, absolutely.
They did 3 times, but I mean, you were talking earlier about how no one believed women. It was daunting. They purposely used that to go after us.
Yes, and I remember being on Capitol Hill
Mm-hmm.
I was on Capitol Hill from 1986 or 87 until 1990. And then I went to work for Ron Brown at the Democratic National Committee. So I was on Capitol Hill a lot, even after that. And you saw it happening all the time. I mean, it was pervasive. And you had friends who were telling you about what happened. You heard rumors, you heard this, you heard that, but it was constant. And no one knew what to do with it except run and hide, hope that it will go away. And, that has to change. And you see it slowly changing now. It's not fast enough by any means.
Well, I don't know if it's changing. Look who's president of the United States. I mean,
well, absolutely. But, I think, he called on Andrew Cuomo to resign early on. And I thought, well, okay, he's got his talking points on this one, right? Because he knew he couldn't go down any other road, but that one was to call on him to resign early on, even before some of the members of the state legislature did in New York.
Well, I think it'll have more to do about the nursing homes, don't you? I think the DNC was ready to throw him under the bus with the nursing home. And God bless Janice Dean, because she fought that battle to bring that to public light. I don't know if it would have been as public if it hadn't been for Janice.
And I really hope that the investigation will lead to something that will hold him accountable, but also bring some sense of justice to the families of those elderly people who passed because of COVID. And I do know that some other governors did the same thing, but we've all been, my age anyway, we've all been to nursing home to see relatives. And we know the kinds of skill level that's in a nursing home. It's not the same as being in a hospital, and so suddenly we have this infectious disease that nobody knows anything about. Even the experts don't know what to make of it and how to treat it and what to do. And we put people back into the nursing homes, back and forth. I mean, it made no sense when it was happening. And looking back on it, I don't know why he got the advice he got or why he made the decisions he did make.
And he covered it up, and I think that's the point: is that he covered
yeah.
it up illegally, and that's what came out.
Yes, and I have known him to do that before on other instances and other issues, is to try to hide or paint over something that was wrong or was a misconduct of some sort, or maybe even illegal in this case, perhaps. So it wasn't shocking to me that he did that. On the other hand, people need to know what the numbers are. They need to understand how many people are dying and where they're dying and how it happened. And to withhold that and manipulate it and lie about it. And then, of course, he had staff doing the same thing for him. And so he was asking people to be, at the very least, unethical, if not do something illegal.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And you had some pretty interesting stories from your time. Like I was reading through some of your interviews, and then of course, looking at your book and whatnot. And well, first of all, you're from Mississippi. What part of Mississippi are you from?
Yes, I'm from Jones County in southern Mississippi, and a little town called Soso is where I was, where I grew up, and very small, very conservative. And remains conservative today. It's a big Trump group of people who live there. And some of them are people I am still close to and love dearly, including my brother. And he's a Donald Trump supporter. And he and I have had interesting discussions about that topic.
Okay.
But Soso, Mississippi, that's where I'm from. Yep.
And then People Magazine did a write-up because one of the stories you talked about was about Bill Clinton. Hey, Reef, do you have that clip, that clip from People's Magazine? There we go. You can show everyone. People Magazine, yeah. I can't.
That's Andrew Cuomo.
There you have it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I think that given the circumstances, the best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing. And therefore, that's what I'll do. Because I work for you. And doing the right thing.
So Karen, you also told the story, and I don't know if it came up in that particular clip there, but you also told the story about Bill Clinton. And it's so interesting because Bill Clinton was just in the news today because he had a private lunch with Joe Biden. But tell us, everyone that's watching, what your Bill Clinton story is.
Okay.
If you wish, yeah.
Well, I was much younger when this happened, 25, 26. This was in 1984. And I was working in a congressional campaign in the Mississippi Delta. The first Black man was running for Congress, and Mississippi had never had any Black Democrat run for a seat in Congress. And so it was a very exciting campaign, and was national coverage of it even. And one evening, I'm with a group of friends, and one of them knows Bill Clinton really well, and the other one is a reporter. And there's me, and the three of us, we're having dinner at Doe's Eat Place in Greenville. And some people will know about Doe's Eat Place because there ended up being a Doe's in Little Rock at some point. We see Bill Clinton there. He's come in with a group of people coming after a fundraiser for another Democrat in the state. And he comes over to our table, and he's happy to see his friend, and he's introduced to the reporter and introduced to me. And, I'm meeting a governor, you know, and I'm young and I think, wow, I'm getting to meet a governor. Big deal. But on the other hand, he starts staring at me. And these two men are talking to him. I'm not talking to him, they are, but he's looking at me. And I'm feeling really strange about it. And there had been rumors about him even then about being a womanizer. And so I wasn't completely shocked by that. But on the other hand, he tells us, he says, hey, meet up with us later at this bar in Greenville, and we can all get back together again and catch up. So we said, okay. And he leaves, and I look at my two friends, and I said, oh man, what was that about? And they said, you know, get ready. That's just normal. That's normal, right? I said, okay. So we go to the bar. He comes and sits down right beside me and engages me in conversation about the congressional race that I'm working on. And so suddenly I'm just delighted by the fact that he's asking me questions about issues. And, you know, I thought I was so knowledgeable about every issue in the book then, and I'm not anymore, but then I was. And so I was talking to him about poverty, and I was talking to him about education, and I was talking to him about, you know, teenage pregnancy, and, you know, all the tough issues that the Mississippi Delta faced then and still faces now. And after about 30 minutes, I'm feeling really puffed up, you know, like, hey, this guy, he's going to run. He could run for president one day. He's talking to me. And then he engages with the other two guys who were there. And then suddenly he writes a note on a napkin, folds it up, and passes it to me. And I open up the napkin, and it has a hotel, a room number, and then a question mark. So I was so like, I did not know how to deal with that. I just looked down and folded the napkin back up and just got up and went to the restroom. Like I couldn't look him in the eye. I just, you know, wanted to get the hell out of there. So I went to the restroom and I hung out there for a little while. Unfortunately, I threw it in the basket in the restroom. I should have kept it, but I didn't. And I came out and I saw another friend. I said, I'm getting out of here. I have to go. Bye. See y'all tomorrow. And I left. And then I told some people about it. But I was just shocked by the fact that he made this pass at me. And in talking to other people about it, they had stories too about times that they had been around him and he had done something similar because he was notorious. So when he ran for president and women were talking about this, and some people were acting like it never really happened. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Well, some people, that was James Carville, actually.
It was.
Whom you know well.
I know James. I haven't seen him in ages, but I knew him then. And he and I had been friends at the Democratic National Committee. And this was before James was popular. He was headed off to work on Harris Wofford's race in Pennsylvania for Senate. And he wins that Senate race. And that's when he becomes, you know, the hit campaign manager, right?
Right.
He then helps Bill Clinton get elected. But I see him around July 4th time, and it's leading up to the November election. And there's Jennifer Flowers and the other women who were being interviewed about their stories on Bill Clinton. And I said to James, now, you know, this is true because come on, you've heard, you know, my story. I told you my story a long time ago. He goes, no, what story? And I said, oh, come on, James, I told you the story. So I, you know, retell it. And I said, oh, come on, you know that. And I said, I'm very offended by the fact that, you guys aren't taking this seriously.
Right.
Because these are women who are telling the truth, and
Yeah.
people are calling them liars.
Mm-hmm.
And he just brushed me aside, and that was it. And then the clock ticks forward, and suddenly there's Monica Lewinsky, and they call her a bimbo and all kinds of names. And then the other women were called trailer park trash. And I'm just so offended by the whole thing.
And Juanita Broderick was brought in. Yeah. Like her.
Right, exactly. And
mm-hmm.
right. And all these women are being like, they have reasons for doing this.
Right.
They're in love with him, but he's not in love with them, and they're jealous. And so they take a revenge on him by exposing this lie and da, 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 da. And about that same time, I had met Michael Isikoff, who was the reporter who later went on to write a book about the womanizing and the relationships that he had had with these women. And he talked to me about the story because he had heard about it. And I told him at first, I said, I can't put this on the record because I'll lose my job, and I won't be able to work for a Democrat ever again, But eventually, because of this attack, one attack after another on Lewinsky, I gave him my story on the record. And look, it was 6 pages in a 450, 500 page book. Right. So it's not like it's a big story, right? But it was big enough that I was working for Andrew Cuomo then, and he would not give me the title of Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, which was a title I wanted and a job I essentially did, but I never got the title because that was my punishment for exposing. Well, in effect, look, I was talking about my boss, right? Bill Clinton. And he, and so, but I just made that decision then because it was just so horrifying that no one was believing her, and she was being treated so badly, as well as all the other women who were involved,
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, you saw a lot on the Hill, and I know, how did you come to hear about my coming forward? You followed, I assume that because you and I started to communicate on Twitter. Do you want to tell the audience about that?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I had read about you just through news coverage. And of course, when I heard your story or read about your story, I didn't hesitate to believe you because that was life on Capitol Hill. Right. And so I didn't know your story. I didn't know you. Yeah. But I just felt like it was the truth just because that's life. That was life. That's the way it worked then. And other women went through similar situations and horrifying moments as you did.
Yeah.
So, I just find it hard and difficult to accept that other women don't speak up more and protect other women. It's so important in our society today, not because we want to defend someone lying, we don't, right? But we want to support someone who, as a civilian, as just a person reading the news, we decide that we believe them until we don't believe them. Then, you want to be supportive. So I happened to get on one of your Twitter podcasts. That's not the right word, but I somehow found it and I got on, And I asked a question, I think, or something, and then we just started talking and engaging, and it was, and you had so many wonderful listeners and speakers who had so many stories. I mean, it is frightening in so many ways.
Capitol Hill, I mean, there was an article during the time you and
I
I were there, and during the 90s, 75%, and this was at the time, I think it was a Post story at the time, 75% of staffers reported sexual harassment and sexual misconduct at that time. And so it was pretty prevalent. And I mean, you know, like things that I've heard from different press, you know, journalists that came to me that would cover my story, not necessarily very fairly, but they would say this behind the scenes. They'd say, oh, well, Biden's a known secret. And I know you heard this about Andrew Cuomo. It's a known secret what Biden does. It's a known secret what Cuomo does. Well, if it's a known secret what these men are doing and they're preying on their own staffers, why do we keep electing them and enabling them to have more power? So, yeah.
It's worth a book on its own to understand the women enablers who really created or helped maintain an environment in which it could happen.
Exactly.
And you definitely see that with Andrew Cuomo. And the only way I can explain it or describe it is that they become convinced that now they are important, that they are somehow running his show, and they are part of that inner circle. And that's hard for women.
So it's all about access to power.
Right. It's hard for women. And it's hard for women to get it. So once they have it, they don't want any woman trying to mess with it. That doesn't happen all the time or a lot, but it happens. And I think that was some of that going on with the women who were working for Andrew Cuomo is, now suddenly these women, some of whom they knew were speaking out against Andrew Cuomo. Well, they needed to defend him because suddenly they were going to lose their own notoriety, their own place in the power structure if he did. So they stepped up, and you still see them today speaking out on his behalf.
You do. And then there was that cringy, remember this, that cringy Cuomo sexual thing when they were trying to make him a hero about COVID and all that. And he wrote his book using money that was nefarious, but yeah, that was really awful. And you saw like celebrities talking how wonderful he was. Yeah. So we went through that. And I have to hand it to Ron Kim, the state representative, right?
Because he really opened the door for women in some ways, because finally a man went public and said, he's a bully. He was threatening to destroy my life. How many men in New York have been threatened by Andrew Cuomo?
Right.
More than haven't been threatened. I mean,
really, that was the kind of environment it was.
Right. And that was with the state legislature. That was with other elected officials in New York. That was with political consultants, pollsters, people who raised money, people who were lobbyists, all those men who are very much part of a power structure in New York, were bullied and threatened. And if they didn't do as Andrew Cuomo said, then they would get in trouble. So they didn't mess with him. And, and over drinks, they might be telling a story or two here or there. But finally, Ron Kim spoke up. And I have to hand it to him for doing that. And that is what drove me to write an op-ed that I did for the New York Daily News. And that's when I coined the term penis politics. because this was before I knew so much about Lindsay Boylan and then Charlotte Bennett. Because I said, this is penis politics. I said, I don't know where I came up with that, but that's just what this is. This is about, why are these men not speaking up about this? Why are they letting him? And good for Ron Kim for finally. So then that's when I wrote the piece, and I did not mention what had happened to me with Andrew. I just let that sit there because it was going to be in the book, and I hadn't finished writing that section yet, so I was still struggling with it. And but Ron Kim, good for him for doing that, because it really did start to make people feel like they could do the same thing. And then Lindsay Boylan, Charlotte Bennett, and then others, and then the woman who worked for him too, and she would often come to his office. I'm blanking on her name. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
She lives in Albany, and she brought a suit, and the district attorney dropped it, as you may recall. I'm sorry, I'm having a blank.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll come back to it. Yeah.
All those, good for them that they came out, because it enabled other women to tell their stories, and women in other places, other cities across the country. It's very empowering to feel like they did it. Maybe I can do it.
Yeah, and one thing, okay, and this leads us to some of the reporting that you saw around this. So that's a good segue into this. Time's Up gets embroiled, right? And as you know, I had a terrible experience with Time's Up. I didn't know that while I was seeking Time's Up help, that 3 people were on Joe Biden's payroll, including 2 of the founders, Hillary Rosen, Tina Chen, and also Anita Dunn, were all on his payroll. And they were trying to extract information from me while I was going to them for help. And then Ryan Grimm, the investigative reporter from The Intercept, broke that story about Time's Up. So you probably saw that.
Yes.
And then later, New York Times broke the story about Cuomo, about the upper level staff having a discussion amongst themselves about Lindsay Boylan and Shar and others, saying, well, look what Joe Biden did about Tara Reade. We can now victim shame on the record. So those text messages and emails came to light through the New York Times. Reef, do you have that piece? Can you put that up? Thank you. There you go. So this is the New York Times piece, if anyone wants to look it up, that went into that.
Right. I remember that very well.
Yeah. So tell me, did you have any encounter with Time's Up yourself, or did you know of anyone that did, and what kind of runaround did they receive?
I didn't really. Only in 2017, I was doing consulting work. I was working for a public relations firm in New York City, and we were working with some women who were involved in starting Time's Up, and then also in starting Me Too. And so I met them, but it wasn't, I didn't develop a relationship with them, because then I had the accident, and I was kind of out of it for a long, long time. But certainly after the accident, when I was recovering, I paid a lot of attention to Time's Up and Me Too, because it really had an impact on decisions I made about how to handle the issue in the book. And it was, and to give credit to both of them, I mean, it was inspiring, because they had a mission that I believed in.
Right.
But to discover later, as you just described, and then the fact that Time's Up was helping Andrew Cuomo victim blame and giving him advice about how to handle these liars. You know, it was started
by a bunch of Obama former staffers.
Yeah, no,
It was a catch and kill basically to protect their candidates. It ended up being a catch and kill. And I think Ronan Farrow,
right, his
book Catch and Kill, which is about the Weinstein, goes over, that. And then he, of course, did a wonderful piece on Lindsay Boylan as well.
Mm-hmm.
The Time's Up, Anita Dunn, who is the head of, for those who don't know, she's the public relations person for SKD Knickerbocker, which was the PR firm that Time's Up would use supposedly to help victims of sexual harassment or sexual assault when it was a powerful person.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they weren't a Democrat, right? Or that rich. So they got caught. Basically, you saw the letter came out. Alison Turkos was one of the brave advocates that brought a letter, brought all of us together, and we did there was a public outcry about Time's Up. And Anita Dunn at that time was made senior White House advisor to Biden. By the way, and I don't have this verified, but there was a talk that when Cuomo was going through his thing, initially, Biden met privately with Cuomo and Anita Dunn was supposedly there. But
yeah, I would.
Interesting to get the White House records to see.
Yes, I would look. I would be very interested in any book, any reporter who took the time to write a book.
So any investigative reporter out there who wants to nail down how involved Anita Dunn was with silencing the Cuomo's survivors and myself, you can provide.
That is one thing that I struggle with, because I knew Anita Dunn when I worked at the Democratic National Committee.
Mm-hmm.
She was working at the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's where she was at the
DC.
same time. And we all were in the same building, and I got to know her through that. I found her very helpful in some things that I was struggling with then. And she was very supportive, giving me good advice. But Washington is a tough place to survive.
Yeah.
And if you want to stay in the power structure, you have to get along. You have to protect these guys, or you're going to get squished.
Yep. That's the environment.
And so I just, Anita Dunn's smart, strong, and she makes a decision to protect, catch and kill. And,
she worked for Weinstein and she worked for Biden. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, I know now there are women I knew from my Cuomo time who are no longer really talking to me anymore. And I haven't tried to regain a relationship at all, but I believe it's because, I messed up their memories of working for him back in the 90s. And now suddenly I've ruined it for them. Right?
Oh.
And I don't know that to be exactly the reason, but that's what I feel like it is.
Yeah. There's a lot of projection, isn't there, sometimes, of people.
Right.
Well, I had the same thing happen to me. I totally get what you're saying. They're projecting, they see them in a certain way, and you're, telling a truth that they don't want to hear and they don't want to participate in it. So they marginalize and
Right. And what I've tried to say is, number one, my book only has 3 chapters with Andrew Cuomo in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the book is about other people, other times, other places. Half the book is about Mississippi, when I grew up there. And one of my very best friends, Janice, I call her Janice, that's not her real name, was raped by a school official in our book room, in the school book room. And she comes and tells me and two other girlfriends, because we were very, very close. We hung together all the time. And she said, but you can't tell anybody about what happened in the book room. It is our secret. I don't want anybody to know, because they're going to say that I really have a crush on him and I'm, pretending like it happened and it really didn't happen. And I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. And she didn't, we didn't. And some really, I think some tragic things happened to her as a result, and I'll spare the details, but that incident in my young life had so much to do with the decisions I made going forward.
Right.
And in some ways it helped, and in some ways it didn't help. But that's why it is so important not to keep these stories secrets, but to talk about them. And how are we going to create a world, an environment where women can talk about this and not be punished for it?
Right. Yeah. Not be. Yeah, exactly.
And
go on. Yeah.
I just, that's the thing that drives me every day, because I have a Google alert on sexual harassment. And how many emails do I get with the Google alert and sexual harassment? I mean, 50, 60, 80 a day of cases that are happening in 2022.
Yeah.
Right. We don't have an ERA. Right. We're working on equity issues, but we haven't solved that problem. And we just heard on the news that we have mostly elderly men making decisions for 150 million women in the United States about abortion.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to let states decide now. And, and I know this is leaked information about what the Supreme Court may or may not do. But if in truth, the Supreme Court rules in favor of a legal dispute going on in my state of Mississippi, right, they will allow states to ban abortion. And, I could just pull my hair out right now.
Yeah, I know.
So it's so.
It feels like sometimes like all the work that we did as young, because I kind of feel like that too with activism work that I did in the 90s or when I was younger. And then, I'm thinking about the Marine Sanctuary Act when I worked on that as a project and volunteered a lot of time. And then now that might be pulled away because we're going to drill offshore. And, it just feels like these issues that should have been put to bed, and we should know to preserve our oceans. We should know that women have a right to choose. We should know like these, and it's like, we've just gone backwards and we're just reliving.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. No, Mississippi is leading the way backwards.
Yeah. Leading the way backwards.
Leading the way
backwards. Title of your book, Leading the Way Backwards.
Well, I have the second chapter is called Last in Everything, because I have this ongoing discussion with my daddy about Mississippi is 50th in everything, Daddy. Why are we 50th? Poverty, education, teenage pregnancy. We're always struggling. We're always 50th. And so I told him, I think I was about 10 years old. I said, could we move to Florida? Because it's not 50th in everything. We get up a notch or two. Right. So, but it hasn't changed much.
Yeah.
So it's, and do you know that in Mississippi, there is no statutory rape legislation? So if a young girl, the age of Janice, my friend who's raped, if she were to tell someone that she was raped, if she was to go to the police or sheriff or district attorney and say she was raped, if the man says, no, it was consensual, it wasn't rape, she agreed. And if she can't prove otherwise, then she's not raped, because there's no statutory rape in Mississippi today.
Current anti.
Which is terrible, awful.
Reef, do we have any super chats or questions for Karen that you wanted to highlight? Okay.
So
wow,
yeah, people want to put them in the chat for that. Let me
Okay.
look at Rockfin. You got a tip saying mad love to you, Tara, from
Oh, thank
Leonard
you.
Trust Fund. So good for them. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
We've gotten loads of chats in the YouTube. We've gotten, lots of love and support for you, Tara. I'm just looking for specific ones. Extra Bola, Ian member says he knows So, not far from Hattiesburg.
Yeah.
So he's from that neck of the woods too, as am I, unfortunately.
Or fortunately, who knows?
Which one? I mean, I was born in Pascagoula. I know that Singing River Hospital ain't that great, so, but, they talked about the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court leak decision. I think Afeni, a friend of the show, is wanting to go protest on the court steps tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. But nice of them to do that. But yeah, loads of just love and stuff for you guys. And let me see if anyone's got questions so far. Jared Brown says that she'll be tweeting about this issue more later after this.
Okay.
Flash Flood Area says, fortunately, they see some progress on these topics with the youngest generation.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
yep. Jade Star agreed that they're taking us back in time. It should not be even questioned. One's own bodily autonomy is their own. Couldn't agreed more. But yeah, I think we're good for another batch if you want to continue. So I'll keep an eye on chats.
I wanted, if you could, Reef, could you show her book, the cover of her book?
Yes, I can.
So could you, Karen, could you tell people where they can find it, where they can order it, and just, where they can find you?
I have her Amazon down in the description, actually, for your book link.
Good.
So people can go to there and order themselves a copy.
You can buy the book on Amazon. And I'm on social media, so you can find me that way. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And I always invite people, women and men, to tell me their stories, because I want to hear them. So when I have a book signing, I always have women who come up and tell me a story. And that's why I made the decision that I didn't want to be the expert on sexual harassment or sexual misconduct in the workplace or in a relationship or in a marriage or whatever. But I just wanted to tell stories, to encourage women to speak up, not shut up. And certainly I went through my whole life practically knowing that if I spoke up, I would be harmed by it. And you have to make that decision. Now, it was easier for me to write the book at 61, 62, than it would be if I had been 35, right? So these women who spoke up about Andrew Cuomo, they were young, 25, 28, 35, and they had the courage to do it. And I wouldn't have done it at that age. I didn't do it.
I didn't do it at that age. Yeah.
Right. And so good for them, because they feel much empowered and emboldened to go and speak. And so I just want to shout out to all women and men who are listening to this, because fathers, uncles, brothers, they need to acknowledge the problem and then make sure their daughters and their family members who were female, that they talk to them about it, and that there's some understanding about what could happen to you in school, in college, in sports,
Right.
right? You know, in the workplace, in a romance, with your boyfriend, with your husband. These are all things that family members should be talking about to the young girls in their lives, so they understand. Janice and the rest of us, Maggie, Libby, and me, we didn't know anything about this. We didn't even know really what rape was in a lot of ways. So the more you know, and if men are talking about it with their family members, it's so important. And then men in the workplace, if they see a man flirting and touching and harassing, they need to tell the man, hey, you need to stop it, because this is going to get us all in trouble. We're going to have problems, and it's going to hurt the company, and it's going to hurt us. So stop it. And it will hurt the woman you're harassing too. So that's so important as well, for more men to really get involved in this issue. And
another poignant part of your story was about your accident. And I don't know how much you want to go into that right now, it's up to you, but but I just found it remarkable. The recovery that you had to make was really, really amazing. And look at you, you're an author, and I can't believe that you had to go through what you went through, and you come to this point, and I wouldn't even have known you've had an accident. So could you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm glad to, actually, because I was a very athletic growing up. And then I continued to work out as I got older. And so one day I go to the gym and I'm on a treadmill. It was cold, it was snowy. This was in New York, in Mount Kisco, New York. And I got on the treadmill instead of running outside. And I don't know what caused it, but I was thrown off the treadmill and I hit my head on the floor. The floor had a piece of carpet on it, but a very thin piece of carpet. And we later discovered that under this thin piece of carpet is concrete. So when my head hit it, I basically cracked my skull, and it caused my brain to, what's the word I'm looking for? Inflate or...
it got inflammation.
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry. I did maybe, but I forget words sometimes, and that might be one of them. Anyway, it got larger. It enlarged, so I had to have immediate surgery to remove part of my skull right here. And oddly enough, they take your skull and they want to put it in safekeeping. So they put it in my tummy. How crazy is that?
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
They put it in my tummy. I learned all of this much, much later. I don't know anything about it, because I'm in a coma basically I'm in a medical coma for 10 days. And then I'm really not conscious for 2 months.
Wow.
But anyway, fast forward, I finally am home after being in the hospital for 2 months. And I have a lot of work to do, because your brain tells your muscles what to do.
Right.
And I was trying to walk, and I couldn't walk. And I had to learn how to walk again. In the hospital, I did a lot of that kind of recovery. But, you have to train your brain to tell your muscles what to do.
Right.
And so it took a long time to get to a place where I could walk safely. And anyway, then I had to go through all the other steps of speaking clearly, talking, and writing. I mean, that was
You
my
wrote a book after the accident.
Yes, I did, but I had to learn how to think again and get my thoughts together so they made sense to me. Then I could write them. And even my writing wasn't anywhere what it had been before the accident. But I had nothing to do. Remember, I came home with nothing to do. I didn't have a job, right? And so, I said, okay, what do I do? And I was really aggressive about my recovery. But my husband, I have to give him credit. He helped me as an editor because, we'll back up just quickly. I found an old diary. I was going through all this stuff in the attic. And again, with nothing to do, you go look for things. And I found this old diary written from high school. And it talked about Janice, Maggie, and Libby, the three girlfriends I had. And I don't forget them ever because they were such a part of my life then. And I was reading it and laughing and crying and remembering things because there were things I couldn't remember. And suddenly it was helping my brain exercise, right? Exercise for my brain, not my legs. And I started, my husband said, write all this down. It'll be a good way for you to get your thoughts together and help you write again. So that's what I started doing. And then it turned into the book, right? So that was an important process for me because at the same time, and you would know this, Me Too was heading forward. There was a lot of news coverage about Me Too. There was a lot of news coverage until COVID, and then the news coverage kind of took a dive because of COVID. But from 2017 to 2020 was a lot of coverage on Me Too. And I was tuning in and I had time to do that. Now, I still can't read because it gives me headaches. And but I've increased the amount of time I can read now from a few minutes to now 30 minutes. And then I sometimes will get a headache. But I do audio. I'm an audio.
An audio book person.
Right. So
I love both. Yeah.
So I listen now to books a lot, and it helps me, I want to read, right? So it's a way for me to do it. So thank goodness for, what's it called? Audible?
Yeah, Audible, yeah.
Audible, yay, I love it.
Yeah. Now, do you have an audio version of your book?
No, not yet, but I've been reading passages. And but you can only really do about 2 minutes, right? So I read passages and I put them up on social media. And then you can also go to my website, penis-politics.com. And there are passages there. And I'm not the best reader, but I make the effort. But it took a lot.
It's amazing what you went through. I admire your tenacity to recover fully, and not only that, but then to go beyond and to have a book published. That must have been an amazing journey for you. I mean, it was one thing to write it, but then to get it published, that's a whole other endeavor. Well, I had a hard time getting it published though, because my book is kind of two parts. It's Mississippi, and then it's DC and New York City. Yeah. And some of the publishers, of the traditional publishers, were saying, these are two different books. You need to write one or the other. And I said, no, it's a memoir. It's about my life. It's about what I went through. And so I had a hard time with that. And then some of them even said, oh, we're not going to sell a book about Andrew Cuomo. Nobody will buy a book about Andrew Cuomo. Were they wrong?
and I'm not saying I'm a bestseller, I'm not, but I just know that they were.
Well, the traditional publishers want to suppress anything negative about the neoliberals, that's for sure, especially the elites.
Yeah. I mean, it was a really tough sale. And I think this was before the women came out and talked about Andrew Cuomo's toxic work environment and Ron Kim. This was way before then when I was talking to publishers. So, there was this, and he had been the COVID king, remember, when he was doing the press conferences, and, that he had published his own book, touting his successes. And, I don't think they wanted to mess with him. Right. And so it was tough, but I did find a smaller publisher who took the book, and off I went. And, congratulations. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So what's next for you? Because you seem like the kind of person that doesn't like to just hang out and be, an author. You probably have more things. Do you have another book in you? Do you have more book tours, or what's going on for you?
I haven't really decided about what I'll do next. Sure, I think about other things to write, other books to write, but I really haven't decided if I'm ready for that or not. I spent a lot of time even getting to a place where I could do interviews like this, because when I first started, I was so frightened and nervous. I had to practice and practice and practice. And then I was still pretty bad at it. If you go back and look at some of the old ones from 2020, I was not very good at it. But so I don't know yet. I'm trying to figure that out, what I want to do. I love, we live in New Orleans now.
Oh, you live in New Orleans. I love New Orleans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And my husband is from New York, and I'm from Mississippi. So when we would come visit my family, we would fly into New Orleans, stay a few days here, then go visit my family and come back, or vice versa, whatever. So one day my husband said, let's move to New Orleans. I said, okay, fine by me. Our kids are grown now, and they're doing their thing, and they love New Orleans. They love coming to see mom and dad. And,
it's a fun city.
It is a great city, and so many cultural differences, but in a good way. Everyone really appreciates the differences. They value the differences here. And there's been so much history in this city. I mean, I feel like it's the Rome of the United States in so many ways, because it's maintained that history. I mean, they have buildings here that were built in the 1700s. And certainly there are buildings like that in New York City and other places in New York. But I mean, these two cities were sort of going at it about the same time. And so it's a fascinating place to compare the two cities in terms of their politics and their livelihood and their prosperity over time. And so I'm happy here in New Orleans. And so I just have to decide what I want to do with my time now that I'm, I have more time.
There you have it.
Right.
Well, thank you for coming and, sharing your stories and your stories of the Hill and, kind of what you went through.
There's a lot more stories in the book. So get the book.
So everyone needs to buy your book so you can and follow you on social media. So
please do that.
So follow Karen on social media. And Reef, if you could put her book up one more time, just so people can look for it. And I just want to say it's been so lovely to talk to you in person. So thank you. And Any final thoughts here, Reef, that we've got from people?
Warren said, New Orleans, so jealous, favorite city in the world.
Yeah.
He also replied earlier, it was much easier for men, especially the ones in power, to get away with harassing women back before the internet, and particularly social media, but even today, some can still get away with it.
Yep.
So, but yeah, other than that, tons of thanks and you know, people appreciating you. Jared Brown said, yes, let's get the men woke. Yep, I agree. But yeah, no, good stuff from everyone and great show. So appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. So everyone who tuned in, I want to thank you. Please follow Karen, get her book, support authors, particularly ones that, you know, are doing independent or smaller book publishers. It's really good to support that effort because those legacy publishers, they get enough attention.
Oh man, don't even get me started on that one. Ugh.
Yeah, let's give some women authors and women creators of creative content some attention here. So, all right, well, Karen, we will talk again because there's much more to talk about.
Let's
Thank you for spending an evening with me, and I look forward to it. And if I visit New Orleans, let's go have a cafe au lait and a beignet.
Yes, absolutely.
Beignets are amazing. We'll see you next time, and you can tune in to the Politics of Survival. Thank you, Reef, and thank you, Independent. Thank you, INN. Thank you, Indy.
Bye, everyone.
You. Good night.
All right, you're out. And I go to the outro, and I play the outro clip.